My name is Gordon Fornell. I go by Gordy. I'm a A-1 pilot from Fornell primarily in 1968, 1969. I entered the Air Force for ROTC from Michigan State University. Went through pilot training, went through all the training there, went through F-86 school in fighters. And at the time they were shutting down Air Defense Command, so they sent us all to B-52s. I flew 5 years of B-52s in SAC, including the Cuban Missile Crisis and a lot of airborne nuclear alert, which was unusual at the time. And in 1965, I was about to get out of the Air Force, and I saw the ad that they were looking for test pilots in the Air Force, so I applied. And I was very fortunate in making the cut the first time I applied. And so the summer of 1965, I got assigned down to Edwards Air Force Base and became a student at the Air Force Test Pilot School. I graduated from there and went to Wright Pat as a flight test pilot for a number of years, a couple years. And then it was during the height of the Vietnam War. And in 1968, I got an assignment to A-1s at Fornell. And so entered training here at Hurlburt, and I think it was in July. I reported to NKP on the 25th of August, 1968, and stayed there for 25 August 1969. We had a small class here, but four of us stayed together and wound up going to NKP together. That was Sam Flowers, Bob Keith, Rich Rose, and myself. We went through all the jungle survival and C-130 late at night, arriving at NKP. Rich and Bob got assigned to the 602nd, and Sam and I got assigned to the first SOS, the Hobos. Shortly after we were there, we got all checked out and everything going. At the time, the Hobos were heavily involved in what was called the swoop flights, but they were a delivery of mines, gravel it was called, which we seeded the Ho Chi Minh Trail with gravel, which when the trucks from the Ho Chi Minh guys rode over that gravel, there were detectors that had been inserted along the route that would either by satellite or through relay plane and C-121s at the time, back to NKP, which was Task Force Alpha, and they would try to locate the trucks that were passing at that point, and then we would attack there from there. But shortly after we were there, got all checked out, got into that involvement, and the ambassador of Laos, Ambassador Sullivan at the time, he wanted to really get involved in helping General Vang Pao in northern Laos throw back the Pathet Lao, which were attacking northern Laos on a regular basis, seasonal kinds of things. We would go through the monsoon season and all come down, and then we all roar back up north the other way. So they used us primarily. He formed the Zorros at the time, so the four of us plus our commander was Bob Casey, Lieutenant Colonel Bob Casey. At the time, we were captains and majors. I think I was a major at the time. And we formed a small squadron at NKP. We started in a refrigerator truck, a van, about the size of this room, was our office, the four of us and the commander. They'd given us the airplanes. We painted them because we were flying mostly at night then, using primarily napalm and marking devices on the ground so we could find ourselves with respect to the target. And so we began a heavy time of flying every night. We flew a full schedule from the early flight was 5:30 at night till the last airplane landed about 5:30 in the morning, just before light. And so that continued for primarily almost my whole year. I was able to fly a lot. I also was the current affairs officer, whatever that meant. I did the frag or the air order, a battle for the wing every morning. So then I would go take a little nap, and we try and go fly every night. And so it was a very busy schedule, and we would primarily fly up in the barrel roll of Laos, a good bit on the Ho Chi Minh Trail in the Steel Tiger. Primarily in the north, we were FACing ourselves and FACing in fast mover F4s, 105s, whatever, ourselves as the FACs, or we were using O2s or C-123 candlesticks on the trail itself for marking the trucks on the trail and then attacking those with primarily napalm on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Up north we had napalm, but we had a range of munitions that we carried, including CBU rockets, bombs, you name it. But it covered the kind of target activity that we had ongoing, either troops or a fixed target or even trucks at the time. So that was a pretty steady diet. I flew, in that year, I flew 200 missions while I was there. I don't know, some over 800 some hours in combat hours, I guess it was. But the squadron grew from the original 4 to a full squadron size, and we got our own building, and we had our own hooch finally, and interesting. We shared a courtyard with the Fireflies, the 602nd Sandy box. They had a Sandy box. But we thought, the Zorros, we ought to build our own, by God, hooch. So we scrounged a bunch of materials from our Army brethren who were building a road nearby. One of their guys went down to Bangkok and stole a big ice machine, and we got it up there. And it was quite a nice facility. I have pictures and things of some of the events we had in there. A lot of the guys that are here today.
I've seen the party suits.
Yeah, party suits.
Can you tell me about where the party suit came from?
Well, I think it started in the early days of the Vietnam War. I didn't see much of it in Vietnam. I think it was mostly the fighter squadrons and fighter wings that were located in Thailand, Takli, Udorn, Ubon. They seemed to have their own party suits, and of course, being A-1 guys up there, we had ours, the blue ones in the hobos. We had a greenish one in the Zorros and the rather yellowish orange ones of the 602nd Sandy guys. So, but that's what we wore, only for occasions where, so occasionally once in a while we wore them at our reunions here, but as you know, some of us don't fit in those suits anymore, but fortunately, everything is held together for me. I guess I could get into it, but it's a little tough walking down the streets of Fort Walton Beach with your flight suit on, your party suit anyway. People don't know what that is.
And that was used for celebrations?
Yeah, primarily when we had an event with more than one of the squadrons, we would get the O2 FACs together, especially the Jolly Greens. They had their own suit too. It was green, I think, a different green. And the whole, when the wing got together or something like that, but it was always just a sort of a spontaneous get together. We're having a thing at the Hobo Hooch tonight or at the Zorro Hooch, and people would show up in their flight suit for something.
I imagine that was a way to. You had a very stressful job.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
Yes.
And the party suits would be a way of normalizing life.
Yes. Yes.
And it would allow you to unwind a little bit.
Right.
And just
yes,
be guys that weren't
That's
in
right.
contact every minute.
Exactly. And it allowed you to identify with the other units, and then, of course, in that environment, the camaraderie and the brotherhood that you have with people that you fight with, I think is special.
Yeah.
So that meant a lot of us. It meant a lot of us when we were together, and that still means a lot. That's why I feel that reunions are so popular, because it's just great to be with guys that you've trusted your life with and participated. So
I've asked several of your fellow pilots, Have you ever encountered anything that is as close to the camaraderie you had in the military when you left the military? Have you ever found anything like that?
Oh no, no, not anything close compared. It's hard to describe to, let's say, a pure civilian group who's never participated in that kind of thing. I think the closest thing is to being on an athletic team, that a cohesive athletic team, let's say a football team, probably more so on something with contact, and where you're really grunging it out close together and you're working together on. It's a physical thing, like flying. Flying's physical. It's mentally taxing. There's all kinds of things going on, and to absorb all that, and then when you settle down and get out of that, it's quite different. And it takes a bit of adjustment getting out of it as well as getting into it. So,
how did you adjust when you came home?
well, fortunately, I have a wonderful family, and everybody pitched in. And I was in a unit again. I came back to Edwards, flight test guys, and in fact there were a couple of A-1 guys at Edwards that were stationed there. And most of the test pilots that I worked with out at Edwards then and later, all had been. So we could, and again, we were on a base. I was isolated at Edwards Air Force Base, which is the definition of isolation, if you will. So it was its own camaraderie, its own solution to that, and so we depended on each other considerable, and of course that helped. And I think we grew out of it pretty quick. Some didn't, obviously that had a little more trouble adjusting. But I think in the mainstream, these guys all seem, pretty darn adjusted and happy to me.
You wouldn't recognize them as a Vietnam veteran
No.
if they weren't walking with a hat on.
Yeah.
I mean, they look like every guy on the street.
I agree.
Of all the planes you flew, I'm trying to do a piece about the Sky Raider itself.
Yes.
This is where I want to tie it all together. And just, was it your favorite plane? Was it not your favorite plane? Did you enjoy flying it? What was it like to fly that Sky Raider? Hold on, Roger.
It was a wonderful airplane to fly. Very unique in that I'd done most of my flying in nose wheel airplanes and such through the Air Force flying. I'd not flown a tail dragger before, so that was a unique experience for me. And once you got so you could keep it on the darn runway, then you were in good shape. And you flew what they trained you here at Hurlburt, as far as flying landing in particular, was nothing like we flew over in Thailand. We made wheel landings in Thailand. We didn't try and three-touch it down, three wheel touchdowns and full stall at the end, kind of, because you just lost all rudder control at that point, and you really had to. You were really on the rudders, and of course we all got good at that, but it was easier flying in Thailand than it was here at Hurlburt. Training. Now I've flown oodles of it. I was in the flight test business. I've flown over 70 airplanes at least, and I enjoyed the mission. I enjoyed the flying, with no pilot assistance that we think about today. I mean, it was needle ball and airspeed kind of thing. No navigation to speak of at all. Big deal. We had maybe a VOR, had an attitude indicator, but I mean, no situational awareness, radio, UH radio, maybe an FM to talk to some of the ground guys, but oh my God, we didn't have anything, and the weather was cruddy in Thailand. Monsoonal weather. We flew in some horrible storms and weather, but we just did it. It was on, and of course, I think we all gained tremendous experience from that. That stayed with us the rest of our life, and that's we were faced at the early time in the Zorros. that night mission was even more difficult in my view. And when we were starting to get new UPT trained pilots just out of pilot training into A1s because of the shortage of pilots. That was traumatic because taking off and immediately going into a thunderstorm at the end of the runway NKP, that was not very pleasant with a fully loaded airplane. And we lost a couple guys just off the end of the runway. They were UPT graduates, and that was tragic. And I think we corrected that pretty good by being a little more selective in letting that happen. But that was a big deal. But the A1 was great to fly. I've flown a number of absolutely marvelous airplanes, both ways, at the high end and the very low end. But for the mission that we had with the A1, it was absolutely terrific, superior.
And one last question. What was it like? What was the emotion like when you had a successful rescue mission?
Well, that was kind of the highlight of any time you were able to, bring back someone that you figured was lost to us, able to save a life or contribute to that at all. It didn't get any better than that. And you could start crying right away if you wanted to. But that was a highlight. Other missions too, I considered not maybe at the same play, but there were a number of times. I mean, we really did some good stuff, and the guys on the ground, they were screaming and hollering how terrific they saved their lives too, because they were getting overrun or getting mashed like crazy, and we were able to help them out. So it was a satisfying mission both ways, and I really like that.
Have you ever been able to meet any of the guys that were on the ground personally?
No, I met a couple of the spouses and their children at reunions. I've never met any of the guys that survived. We may have had one or two at our reunion here, but I haven't been able to contact any of those guys.
Did you pull any Firefly missions?
Yes.
I'm sorry, not Firefly, but Prairie Fire.
Oh yes, many.
When you were with the hobos, I imagine you were
hobos,
in Phil.
yeah.
Don Engelbrechtson
Yes.
got a bunch of fellas together, and he's kind of bridged the gap between SOG
Oh yes.
and here. So they go out to SOAR, the Special Operations reunion, and
oh yeah.
I think one of the funniest things I saw was an A1 pilot and a Green Beret, and they were both looking at each other going, "You're the craziest man I've ever seen," and the A1 pilot's going, "You're down in that grass, you're out of your mind," and the guy in the grass is going, "No, you flew into all that fire, and they knew who you were just sitting up in the sky. No, you're the craziest guy I've ever seen."
Well, the SOG thing, they were on our base with us, and we put those teams in, and we were somewhat isolated from them, but they were just, you talk about guys that knew what the heck they were doing. And when you set them out there, of course, as you've probably read, some of them hit the ground in 5 minutes. They'd be under severe attack, or we'd have just a nice fly-in almost, and put them in, and they'd live happily ever after and get called out in a week or so. But man, there were some. They just touched the ground and started screaming. That they were getting attacked, and those were missions just like SARS, and so very similar. It didn't matter much. We did the job kind of
thing. Those men's lives are in your hands.
Oh yeah, but now that that's linked up a little bit, talking about the SOG and some of the other stuff. Just a story from Roger last night.
Yeah.
There are people there that never heard that. I had the pleasure of Heine Adderhole was here when I was a commander here, so we got together a number of times socially, and then we just kibitz a lot because I was an A1 guy, and of course he'd been over there and he'd done a lot of things in town that I get involved in the community here. So Heine and we sat around drinking his gin and tonic, and he's told me those stories that I heard last night. But it was so good to have him tell that whole crowd, because I saw a lot of mouths hanging open last night because those stories have not been told.
I was giving Roger a hard time. I said, "You forgot the most important part of that story." And he said, "Well, what was that?" And I said, you didn't tell him about the last man flying the A-1. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Roger's like, yeah. He said, since Jack put me in the family model on the first day and he took the fighter, Jack said on the second day, you want to lead? He said, no, you go ahead and lead. He said, so I'm waiting until I see Jack going down on final. He said, I see the little puff of smoke. And I said, hey, Jack, you down? And he goes, yeah, I'm down. He goes, well, I guess that makes me the last man to ever fly an A-1 in combat. Jack's like, you son of a gun, you did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's good.
Too funny.
Yeah.
We did get a video of Roger and Jack. Some other friends of ours went out and filmed them just before Jack passed away.
Oh, terrific.
So when I get back, one of my first things is I got to work on that video a little bit, then I got to get somebody to work on the transcription of the audio, and we'll be putting that up as fast as we can. So we'll get that out through the guys.
Yeah.
And let them
When we formed the Zorros, Jack was famous in our annals because he was the Zorro of the early days in T-28s. That's where that all got, and that's where the name started. And Jack and a couple of guys who were T-28 guys, and then they disbanded and we didn't have the 28s anymore. But then when the Ambassador started, that's the name we picked again, just sort of in that honor. So that's what we did.
That is fantastic. You kept the lineage of that name already.
Yeah, that's right.
Gordy, I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I've had a wonderful Air Force career. I'm glad to be alive, and I'm glad to be with all of my gang here in the reunion. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Hello, Sandy 2, Sandy 1. Go ahead. Are you with the Jollies this time? That's firm.
King 27, Jolly Green 30, Victor on the run-in.
Say again, Alpha. Understand you copy 8-2 Bravo? Jolly, hold your position, hold your position. Hello, 8-2 Bravo, hello, 8-2 Bravo, Sandy 1, go ahead. Speak slower, 8-2 Bravo, speak slower, Sandy 1. Okay, where am I from you now? Where am I from you now? Say again, say again.
Okay, I want you to go back with 3 and 4. Go back with 3 and 4. We'll call you to execute as soon as we find Bravo. Okay, we're going back with 3 and 4. Alamo 3, King 27.
8-2 Bravo, Sandy 1. How do you read now? You have insight? Have me in sight? Okay, I'm going to fly down the river, down the river. Tell me when I'm over your location, over your location.
A little bit longer until Alamo 2 gets in a little bit of shape.